power was never born from gold. It was born from belief. Before coins, before credit, before banks, humans traded survival, food, safety, obedience. But someone, somewhere, realized a truth darker than any sword. If you could control what others believed had value, you no longer needed to control their bodies. That moment when worth became symbolic was the birth of money as power. It was also the beginning of control. The earliest rulers understood that money was not a tool of exchange. It was a mechanism of hierarchy. They issued coins stamped with their faces, not for decoration but for domination. Every transaction reminded the people who owned the system. A man could reject the king's laws, but he could not reject the king's currency. That's the first Machiavellian law of wealth. Control the medium and you control the man. Machiavelli never wrote about money directly, but his principles expose its core. He taught that power rests not in possession, but in perception. It is better to make men depend on you than to make them fear you. Money achieved that better than armies ever could. Fear provokes resistance. Dependence creates loyalty. And so rulers discovered a quieter form of tyranny, one that required no chains, no violence, no decrees, just trust. Trust engineered by those who controlled the mint, the measure and the meaning of value. The genius of money was not invention, it was illusion. Gold, once rare, was replaced by promise. A note, a bond, a number in a ledger. Each step removed. Money further from reality and closer to faith. People began trading not for what was, but for what was believed to be. Wealth became no longer tangible, but psychological. And in that transition, the powerful found their weapon. To control faith is to control the future. Because when people believe your promise, they surrender their labor, their time, their obedience. In exchange for paper, you can create at will. What began as a market became a monarchy disguised as commerce. The ruling class understood this perfectly. They didn't need to own everything. They just needed to own the system that defined ownership. To the masses, money meant opportunity. To rulers, it meant obedience. Every coin minted, every contract signed, every debt created, all built an invisible architecture around the human mind. One where freedom became measurable and therefore controllable. Machiavelli warned that true rulers should govern not by force but by dependency. The wise prince, he wrote, makes himself the arbiter of his subjects' fortunes. In modern language, he who decides what you earn decides what you are. That is the hidden elegance of money. It converts power into a system that feels voluntary. No soldier needed. No punishment required. Only numbers on a screen that determine whether a man eats, works, or sleeps under a roof. The system doesn't have to fight you when you fight to preserve it. As civilizations grew, the illusion deepened. Governments issued currency for the people, but each coin, each note carried an unspoken message. This is not yours, it's ours on loan. From then on, every transaction was a quiet act of surrender. You worked, not to build wealth, but to circulate obedience. You saved, not for freedom, but to maintain faith in the game. The rich never chased money. They created systems where others chase it for them. By the Renaissance, when Machiavelli wrote The Prince, this truth had already matured. He observed how wealth turned rulers into gods and subjects into believers. He saw that money allowed rulers to buy loyalty without the guilt of oppression. That was the sophistication he admired, control without conflict, to keep the people convinced they were free, while their freedom was priced by the very tools they used to pursue it. He called it the art of necessità, the exploitation of necessity. When a man must act to survive, his choices cease to be his own. Modern economics calls it productivity. Machiavelli would call it submission disguised as participation. As centuries passed, money evolved, but its essence remained Machiavellian. Kings gave way to bankers, empires gave way to corporations, and the mint became digital. Yet the principle didn't change. Power belongs not to those who earn, but to those who define earning. Every new financial innovation, from credit cards to cryptocurrency, has been sold as liberation, but each one adds another layer between value and reality. The more abstract money becomes, the easier it is to manipulate, and the harder it is to question. A man can touch gold, but how does he resist a number? How does he rebel against code? He can't, because he no longer knows what he's fighting for. The world learned to worship digits, to equate success with visibility, not ownership. And in doing so, it surrendered the final piece of autonomy, because once wealth becomes digital, it can be deleted. And what can be deleted at will is not wealth, it's permission. The powerful now hold not your money, but your access to it. They can freeze, track, limit, and dictate it, all in the name of security. That's not freedom, that's financial feudalism, the return of kings through code. And yet most people don't resist, they applaud. Because comfort blinds. Faster than fear, money began as a tool, it became a language, and now it is a weapon, one aimed not at the body but at the mind. You don't see the wound. You feel it when your worth is measured in numbers that others control. That is the Machiavellian genius of the system. The more you chase money, the less you possess power. The less you chase power, the more money follows you. Because money, like obedience, always moves toward the source of control. The first weapon of civilization was not the sword, it was the coin. And the hands that minted it never left power, they simply changed empires. Machiavelli would whisper the same lesson today. If you wish to rule, do not seek wealth. Seek to control what others believe wealth is. Because, in a world where everything can be bought, the only real currency left is perception. Freedom and dependence cannot coexist. Every empire has understood this, and so does every financial system that survives beyond its ruler. Machiavelli warned, men should be either crushed or bound by necessity. Debt achieved both without bloodshed. The modern world calls it credit, a word that sounds empowering and yet hides the oldest form of control ever invented. Money itself is not power, but the flow of money is. And those who designed the modern economy understood something the average man never will. If you can make people live in permanent anticipation, waiting for the next paycheck, the next profit, the next opportunity, you don't need to rule them. They will rule themselves in your name. The genius of the system lies in how it sells obedience as progress. Debt became investment, dependence became opportunity, submission became ambition. Every loan issued, every credit limit approved, every mortgage signed, all of it reinforces one silent truth. You are not free, you are financed. The moment you owe, you obey. That is not economics. That is psychological warfare disguised as prosperity. Debt was once shame. Now it is identity. Governments owe, corporations owe, citizens owe, and because everyone owes, no one questions who owns. Machiavelli would have admired this perfection of hierarchy. A structure where every level of society believes it is climbing, yet all are tethered to the same chain, only at different heights. That chain is called liquidity. Liquidity, the flow of money, is what gives the illusion of freedom. It moves fast enough to keep people chasing it, but never fast enough to catch. Like a mirage in the desert, it keeps the exhausted walking. Inflation completes the trap. It punishes saving, rewards borrowing, and ensures the future is always more expensive than the past. It makes progress impossible because progress requires accumulation, and accumulation has been redefined as loss. When prices rise faster than wages, hope becomes debt, and when hope itself requires financing, the human spirit becomes collateral. This is not coincidence, it is design. Machiavelli wrote that rulers should avoid taking from their subjects directly. Better to make the people pay themselves. Inflation achieves exactly that. It taxes invisibly. It robs silently. It enslaves politely. Every central bank, every interest rate, every stimulus package follows the same logic. Never allow the people to feel poor enough to revolt, but never free enough to leave. Keep them suspended in controlled struggle. That balance is the architecture of modern obedience. To the untrained mind, this system looks chaotic, but to those who designed it, it's a masterpiece, an engine of dependence powered by hope. Hope that the next raise will fix it, hope that the next market will rise, hope that the next politician will reform it. The system doesn't need to deliver results. It only needs to keep hope alive, because hope is the cheapest form of control ever invented. Machiavelli would call this the art of sustaining necessity. He knew that the best ruler is not the one who conquers, it's the one who makes his subjects need him. The poor man needs his employer. The employer needs investors. The investor needs liquidity. The liquidity needs belief, and belief needs a story. That story is what modern power sells best. The story of progress, the myth of upward mobility. The dream that tomorrow will be better. If only you keep playing, but here's the truth. The system is not broken. It's functioning perfectly for those who built it. The architecture of dependence is not accidental. It's engineered with surgical precision to ensure that most people will never stop working, borrowing, or consuming long enough to question it. The average man believes he works for his salary. In reality, he works for the system that creates the salary. He earns money to spend it on necessities defined by others. He saves money that loses value by design. He borrows money created from nothing. And yet, he still believes he is free, because his prison is comfortable. Debt is not evil, it's elegant. It gives rulers what brute force never could: voluntary servitude. A man in chains will eventually rebel. A man in debt will justify his captor. He will call it responsibility. He will call it adult life. He will call it reality. That's the level of psychological sophistication Machiavelli would admire. The ability to create obedience that feels like virtue. Even nations are built on this illusion. Governments borrow endlessly, knowing their citizens will pay. Corporations borrow endlessly, knowing their customers will pay. Banks borrow endlessly, knowing their depositors will pay. And when the system collapses, the same citizens who were exploited rise to defend it, out of fear of losing the very chains that define them. That is not failure, that is mastery. It's not oppression, it's architecture. But in every structure there are cracks. A few individuals learn to see dependence for what it is, a system of traded illusions. They stop measuring wealth in currency and start measuring it in control. They stop chasing money and begin designing leverage. They realize that debt can be reversed. It can make others rely on you. That is the Machiavellian inversion. Turn the chain around. Make others depend on your knowledge, your systems, your capital, your silence. Because once you become necessary, truly necessary, you become powerful. The system cannot crush what it relies upon. Machiavelli would tell you, the wise man learns not to escape dependence, but to reposition it. The masses seek freedom through income. The powerful achieve freedom through influence. The difference is not effort, it's structure. The poor build effort, the rich build systems, because systems, not sweat, decide who serves whom. Money itself was never the enemy. Ignorance of how it works was. Every note, every tax, every loan is a design, one that feeds on reaction. But once you understand it, once you see how dependence functions, you stop being its victim, you start becoming its architect, and that's when the system shifts. It no longer consumes you, it begins to serve you, because you finally grasp the second forbidden law of Machiavellian control. It's not money that enslaves, it's not knowing how it does. Money controls the body, fear controls the mind. And the ruler who commands both doesn't need armies, only narratives. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. In The Prince, he asked the timeless question, is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was precise. It is safer to be feared. But what he left unsaid, the truth whispered between his lines, is that the most efficient fear is invisible, because the fear you can't name controls you completely. In modern power, fear is not screamed through orders or violence. It's whispered through uncertainty. The financial elite discovered that emotion can be monetized, and that fear is the most profitable emotion of all. That man who's calm thinks, a man who's afraid reacts, and every reaction, every movement, every desperate purchase or sell or click generates data, debt, or both. That's how emotion became the new economy. The market itself runs not on mathematics but on mood. Stocks rise not because of growth but because of belief. Currencies fall not because of scarcity, but because of panic. Entire nations' fortunes depend not on production, but on perception. Fear became the algorithm, and those who understand it learned to weaponize it, to create storms they could predict, profit from, and escape before the lightning struck. Every crisis is not chaos, it's choreography. Machiavelli would call it governance through anxiety. When people are uncertain, they seek protection, and the one who offers security, whether a king, a state, or a corporation, becomes godlike. Consider how this works in your daily life. You are told what to fear: recession, inflation, unemployment, irrelevance. Each fear pushes you towards something pre-designed to soothe it. Insurance, investment, entertainment, validation. Every emotion becomes a transaction. The fear of loss makes you spend. The fear of being forgotten makes you post. The fear of falling behind makes you obey. And every act of fear feeds the same machinery that created it. The genius of modern control is that it never demands submission. It sells comfort instead. You don't have to rebel if you feel safe. You don't have to question if the system promises protection. That's how governments maintain order without war. That's how corporations sell necessity without violence. That's how the market enslaves minds without chains. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He would say, when you can make a man fear loss more than he desires freedom, he will obey you willingly. Look closely at how fear fuels the economy. Every advertisement is a subtle threat. You will be forgotten without this. You will fall behind without that. Everyone else is improving, except you. It's not information. It's intimidation wrapped in aesthetics. Marketing became the modern version of monarchy. Instead of decrees, it issues emotions. Instead of punishment, it offers envy. And people, hypnotized by comparison, never realize they're volunteering their obedience. Fear has always been the foundation of hierarchy, but never has it been so sophisticated. In earlier ages, kings needed soldiers. Today's rulers need only attention. Control the collective fear, and you can predict collective behavior. Predict behavior, and you can profit from it infinitely. That's why every cycle of panic, economic, political, ecological, always ends the same way. The rich emerge richer, the poor emerge more obedient, and the middle class, the supposed stabilizers, are kept in constant agitation, too anxious to think, too distracted to organize. It's not exploitation, it's equilibrium. Machiavelli warned that the ruler must avoid being hated, but he never said the ruler should avoid being feared. He simply advised that fear must be controlled. Uncontrolled fear turns to chaos. Controlled fear turns to loyalty. That's what modern leaders, markets, and media have perfected. A calibrated level of anxiety that ensures obedience while maintaining the illusion of choice. Every breaking news alert, every sudden market crash, every divisive trend, all serve the same purpose: to keep the masses emotionally engaged, yet intellectually disengaged, because the more emotional you are, the less strategic you become. Fear has become currency, traded, stored, and leveraged. Fear circulates like money, compounds like debt, and enslaves more effectively than any law. The rich don't experience it the same way. Their fear is theoretical. They diversify it, insure it, analyze it. The poor consume fear, daily, instinctively, subconsciously. It's fed to them in headlines, advertisements, and social hierarchies. They live in reaction mode. And a man trapped in reaction cannot create strategy. He can only survive, which means he can only serve. Every empire uses fear as architecture. In religion, it's divine punishment. In politics, it's the enemy abroad. In finance, it's scarcity. In culture, it's irrelevance. 4 forms, 1 function: control through emotion. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. He understood that human beings don't need to be forced, they need to be nudged. And fear, unlike love, doesn't fade with time. It compounds, it spreads, it binds. That is why systems that thrive on fear can survive any crisis, because they create them. So what happens when you begin to see fear as currency? When you stop reacting to it and start measuring it, you begin to operate above the market. You begin to recognize panic as opportunity, outrage as manipulation, crisis as engineering. The moment you stop fearing what others fear, you become unprofitable to the system, and what cannot be profited from cannot be controlled. That's the first step toward real power, emotional sovereignty. To no longer let your pulse be dictated by headlines, your time by trends, your worth by noise. Machiavelli would call this the ruler's calm, the ability to appear moved by everything yet be ruled by nothing. Fear makes slaves. Clarity makes strategists, and the ones who understand this rule, those who turn emotion into calculation, inherit the world, because in the end, the economy doesn't trade in dollars or data. It trades in human attention. Money is the tool, fear is the fuel, and control is the outcome. The masses will always sell their calm for comfort, but the few, the ones who remain still while others panic, they buy silence and sell certainty. Money is not wealth, it is movement. And the ones who control that movement, banks, states, algorithms, are not participants in the game. They are the referees. Machiavelli would have understood this immediately. He warned princes never to rely on the loyalty of others, only on systems that make disobedience impossible. Modern rulers obey that advice not with swords, but with servers. The world's wealth does not sit in vaults. It circulates endlessly, like blood through an engineered body. And those who designed the arteries decide who lives and who bleeds. Every civilization's stability rests on velocity, not abundance. If money stops moving, economies die. If it moves in the wrong direction, rulers fall. This is why the true elites, central banks, global lenders, multinational gatekeepers, don't seek to own money. They seek to regulate how fast it flows, where it flows, and when it stops. Control the speed and you control emotion. Control emotion and you control politics. Control politics and you own the world. It's not conspiracy. It's architecture in a Machiavellian terms. This is governing through rhythm. Keep your subjects busy, reward them occasionally, but never let the music stop. And so the economy dances, inflation, stimulus, recession, recovery, all choreographed cycles designed to keep circulation alive yet unpredictable. Each crisis redistributes wealth not upward by accident, but by precision. Liquidity injections, quantitative easing, interest adjustments, all act as invisible commands. They drain the masses' savings while replenishing the system's core. The people believe they are suffering misfortune. In truth, they are performing maintenance, keeping the machine alive. Machiavelli said that a ruler must learn how not to be good when goodness threatens power. The modern elite learned how not to be fair when fairness threatens liquidity. When markets crash, the poor lose savings. When they recover, the rich sell timing. And the illusion continues, prosperity rising on the ashes of those who financed it. This is not cruelty, it's calculus. The real war is not fought between rich and poor, but between those who create movement and those who merely follow it. The worker works for income, the investor works for yield, but the sovereign, he makes both of them move. That is the Machiavellian truth behind every empire. Control the circulation, and the people will mistake dependency for freedom. Look at the modern digital economy. Every payment passes through invisible toll gates, processors, platforms, banks, states. Each one takes a fraction, extracts data, learns habits, builds behavioral maps. Money no longer just moves, it speaks. It tells governments what you buy. It tells corporations who you are. It tells algorithms what you fear. And when money speaks louder than citizens, democracy becomes decoration. Even rebellion has been monetized. The system anticipates disruption, absorbs it, and converts it into profit. You protest through platforms owned by the very corporations you oppose. You fund resistance with currencies monitored by the banks you despise. You express freedom through networks that sell your anger as engagement. That's not revolution, that's recycling. The system doesn't fight dissent, it feeds on it. Machiavelli would recognize this as the highest form of political sophistication, the transformation of opposition into oxygen. When your enemy's rage powers your rule, you have achieved control through paradox. That's how circulation becomes control, not through censorship, but through design. Circulation doesn't just describe economics, it defines perception. Information, capital, and attention all obey the same law. Those who own the channels own the future. Banks move money. Media moves belief. Technology moves desire, and each layer feeds the next. The algorithm predicts what you will want. The market supplies it before you ask. Your data funds the cycle that trains the next algorithm. You think you are choosing. In reality, you are circulating. Inside a loop designed to keep power where it began. The powerful don't seek to slow circulation, they seek to centralize it, to ensure every flow out of cash, of information, of desire, passes through a gate they control. That's why governments fear decentralized currencies. That's why corporations crave user ecosystems. That's why your free platforms harvest more than they host. Freedom without dependency is unprofitable, and the system doesn't build what it cannot sell. There is a brutal elegance in this order. You can work your entire life, make millions, and still never leave the network that defines your worth. Because true independence doesn't come from earning. It comes from detaching your circulation from theirs. The man who controls his own flow, his income, his time, his attention, no longer feeds the system. He feeds himself, and that is the only form of wealth the system cannot tax. Machiavelli would call him dangerous, because independence creates unpredictability, and unpredictability disrupts rhythm. A single individual who refuses to play the key tempo threatens the orchestra of obedience. The rulers of circulation understand this. They maintain balance through incentives, not chains. They let you feel progress while keeping you positioned. Work harder, you get a raise. Invest smarter, you get taxed. Save longer, your currency devalues. Every action creates motion. Every motion returns to them. It is the law of circulation. All flows serve the center. The greatest lie of economics is that value comes from production. It doesn't. It comes from motion, and motion belongs to those who manage it. You may think you are earning. In truth, you are circulating, sustaining a rhythm composed centuries ago by minds who understood that money is not the end of power, but the instrument of it. Machiavelli would bow to that mastery. Because control through circulation requires no blood, no conquest, no decree. Only movement, predictable, profitable, and permanent. And that is the invisible empire you live inside. An empire not of nations, but of networks. Not ruled by kings, but by currents. The ones who master flow don't chase wealth, they become it. Empires used to be carved in stone, now they're written in code. Once power needed armies, now it only needs infrastructure. The world has entered a new age of empire, one without kings, flags, or borders. That has no anthem, no crown, no throne. Its sovereignty is invisible yet absolute. You don't live in it, you live through it. This is the silent empire, an order of control sustained not by violence, but by design. Machiavelli foresaw it in essence, though not in form. He wrote that a prince must build power not on walls, but on minds. Centuries later, that prophecy was fulfilled, not by monarchs, but by markets. The true rulers today don't command territory. They command architecture, systems that define what reality can be. Money is their blood, technology is their nervous system, belief is their soul, and you, the citizen, the worker, the consumer, you are the muscle that keeps it all moving. Think of how the empire operates. Every tap, every click, every purchase, every opinion, all of it flows upward, forming patterns, insights, predictions. Those patterns feed algorithms. Those algorithms shape culture, and culture shapes behavior. Mansi is not tyranny. It is choreography, a dance so vast that you forget it has a composer. In the silent empire, obedience no longer feels like submission. It feels like convenience. You are tracked not by soldiers, but by your own reflection. Your desires are monitored, monetized and mirrored back to you as options. Choice has become the most elegant illusion of all. You can choose your brand, your platform, your ideology, but the frame stays the same. You can vote for your leader, but not for your lender. You can change your job, but not the system that defines its value. The empire doesn't forbid rebellion. It funds it, studies it, and sells it back to you as entertainment. This is what Machiavelli would call the final perfection of governance, a world where control no longer requires coercion. Because the people control themselves, they maintain their own prisons, they polish their own chains, and they call it progress. The true genius of the silent empire is its plausible benevolence. It never looks evil. It looks efficient, it looks fair, it looks like help. You are told it gives you access, connection, opportunity, but every tool of freedom comes with a hidden ledger, a record of dependency. Your bank protects you but monitors you. Your social network connects you but profiles you. Your government serves you but records you. Every safeguard doubles as surveillance. Every service doubles as a leash. And because the empire speaks softly, no one notices the weight of its silence. Machiavelli's teachings were once considered cynical. But in this age, they are simply descriptive. He said, "Men are ungrateful, fickle and cowardly. He who builds on them builds on sand." The rulers of today built on data instead. Data never forgets, it never rebels, it never demands justice, it only expands. And so the empire grows, not by conquest, but by calibration. Every update, every upgrade, every new version of convenience expands the reach of invisible dominion. Yet, every empire carries within it the seed of its own decay. For this one, that seed is awareness. The moment a mind perceives the mechanism, the spell weakens, because visibility is poison to manipulation. The silent empire survives on faith, the belief that the system is too complex to question, too big to change. But complexity is only confusion with good marketing. The empire is not indestructible, it's dependent on your participation, your attention, your emotional investment. Withdraw them and it starves. Machiavelli would not advise rebellion, he would advise precision. Withdraw strategically, not theatrically. Detach, don't destroy. Use their systems but never belong to them. Take their tools but never trust their stories. Play the game, but never forget who built the board. That is the modern form of sovereignty, not isolation, but awareness. To live inside the empire with your eyes open, to obey out of choice, not reflex, to trade but not worship, to move through systems without being moved by them. Because freedom today is not external, it is psychological. It begins the moment you stop mistaking access for autonomy and speed for direction. The powerful remain calm not because they are emotionless, but because they understand the architecture. They know where money flows. They know how belief spreads. They know how fear multiplies. And most importantly, they know how silence sustains it all. The silent empire thrives on noise, but it fears awareness. That is why distraction is its weapon, and stillness is your defense. Every moment you choose focus over frenzy, thought over reaction, creation over consumption, you weaken it. Not because you destroy it, but because you stop feeding it. The Kai. Empire cannot survive on silence that thinks. It only thrives on noise that obeys. And so the final law of Machiavellian wealth is not about manipulation or greed. It's about perception. Power was never about who holds the sword or who prints the money. It's about who writes the story everyone believes. The silent empire writes in algorithms, trades in attention, and rules through convenience. But every ruler, ancient or modern, shares the same weakness. Those who see the design can no longer be ruled by it. The world may remain silent, but your mind doesn't have to.